There's a strange pattern happening right now that nobody's talking about. People who whispered about your money problems, who laughed at your struggles, who made your financial hardships the topic of their lunch conversations, they're suddenly facing their own financial reckonings. And I'm not talking about small inconveniences. I'm talking about audits, lawsuits, unexpected debts appearing from nowhere, and bank accounts that suddenly don't add up. This isn't coincidence. This is something far more powerful at work. If someone mocked your financial situation while you were down, if they spread rumors about your money struggles, or if they used your hardship as entertainment, the universe has already begun its response. And what's coming for them isn't something they can lawyer their way out of or charm their way through. Today, we're uncovering exactly what happens when someone turns your financial pain into their social currency. If this message reached you at the exact moment you needed to hear it, if you've been gossiped about during your lowest financial moments, type 333 in the comments to activate a frequency of financial restoration in your life. That number isn't random, it's a signal of alignment with abundance consciousness. And if you're new here, subscribe now, because this channel reveals the hidden patterns that most people are too afraid to discuss, the truths that explain why some people rise while others mysteriously fall. Now, let's begin. When someone gossips about your financial struggles, they think they're just having a conversation. They believe their words disappear into the air, harmless and consequence-free. But energy doesn't work that way. Every word spoken carries a frequency, and every frequency creates a ripple that moves through the fabric of reality itself. When someone chooses to make your financial hardship their topic of discussion, especially when they do it with mockery, judgment, or schadenfreude, they're not just being unkind. They're initiating an energetic transaction that will demand payment. And the universe has a very specific accounting system. Here's what most people don't understand about financial gossip. When you speak about someone's money struggles with negative intent, you're essentially placing yourself in vibrational opposition to that person's eventual rise. You're energetically betting against their recovery. And when that person does recover, which they often do, especially if they've maintained integrity through their struggle, that opposing energy snaps back like a rubber band stretched too far. The gossiper suddenly finds themselves in the exact energetic position they mocked. Their own financial foundation begins to crack, not because of external circumstances alone, but because they've aligned themselves with scarcity consciousness by celebrating another person's lack. The IRS audits, the unexpected tax bills, the forgotten debts that suddenly resurface, these aren't random events. They're the material manifestation of energetic debts coming due. When you mock someone's financial struggle, you create a karmic invoice that the universe will collect. And it collects with interest. The person who laughed at your eviction notice suddenly faces their own housing crisis. The co-worker who joked about your old car at the water cooler suddenly has their own vehicle repossessed. The family member who couldn't stop talking about your bankruptcy suddenly discovers their own credit is destroyed. This pattern repeats so consistently that it can't be dismissed as coincidence. What makes this particularly powerful is that financial gossip often comes from a place of hidden insecurity. The people most likely to discuss your money problems are frequently those who are terrified of facing their own. They gossip to create distance between themselves and the financial vulnerability they see in you, a vulnerability that terrifies them because they recognize it in themselves. So when they speak about your struggles, they're actually inviting the universe to reveal their own hidden financial weaknesses. And the universe never declines that invitation. It simply waits for the perfect moment to pull back the curtain and show everyone what was hidden behind their facade of financial stability. Let's talk specifically about why IRS audits and tax investigations seem to follow financial gossipers with uncanny precision. This isn't superstition. There's an energetic logic to it. When someone gossips about your money, they're focusing intense attention on financial matters, specifically on perceived wrongdoing, inadequacy, or failure. That focus creates an energetic beacon. They're essentially lighting up the frequency of financial investigation and scrutiny. And once that frequency is activated in their field, the universe responds by turning that same scrutiny back toward them. What they focused on in your life suddenly becomes magnified in their own. Tax audits are particularly common because they represent the ultimate financial reckoning, an outside authority examining every aspect of your financial life to find inconsistencies. When someone gossips about your financial struggles, they are often implying or outright stating that you must have done something wrong, made bad choices, or deserved your hardship. That judgment creates a mirror. The universe says, "You believe financial struggle indicates wrongdoing? Let's examine your financial life under that same assumption." Suddenly their tax returns from 3 years ago are being questioned. Deductions they thought were legitimate are being challenged. Mistakes they made, even honest ones, are being discovered and penalized. I've watched this pattern unfold dozens of times. A woman who constantly talked about her sister's credit card debt suddenly found herself facing an IRS audit for $80,000 in back taxes she didn't know she owed. A man who made jokes about his neighbor's bankruptcy at community gatherings discovered that his own business had tax issues going back 5 years that he'd completely missed. A co-worker who couldn't stop discussing someone's car repossession at the office suddenly had her wages garnished for student loans she thought were in forbearance. In each case, the financial crisis that struck them was directly related to the type of struggle they'd mocked in someone else. The reason audits specifically seem to follow this pattern is because audits represent exposure. When you gossip about someone's financial struggles, you're exposing their private situation for public consumption. You're taking what should be confidential and making it entertainment. The universe responds by exposing your own financial secrets. That side income you didn't report, those deductions you exaggerated, that business expense that was actually personal, those cryptocurrency transactions you forgot about. Every hidden corner of your financial life suddenly gets illuminated by the exact spotlight you shined on someone else. And unlike social gossip, IRS scrutiny comes with legal consequences, penalties, and a paper trail that follows you for years. Here's where things get really interesting. The financial consequences that come back to gossipers aren't usually proportional. They're multiplicative. If someone gossiped about your $3,000 debt, they don't just encounter a $3,000 problem, they encounter something significantly larger. It's as if the universe calculates not just the amount you struggled with, but also the emotional damage caused by having that struggle publicly discussed, mocked, or judged. Every conversation they had about your finances, every person they told, every moment of schadenfreude they experienced, all of it gets factored into the karmic calculation, and the bill reflects that comprehensive accounting. This is why you see situations where someone who gossiped about relatively modest financial struggles suddenly faces absolutely crushing financial crises. The multiplication isn't punishment, it's balance. They didn't just interfere with your money, they interfered with your peace of mind, your reputation, your emotional stability, and your ability to recover with dignity. Each of those impacts has an energetic cost. So when the consequences arrive, they're not just about dollars and cents. They're about the total impact of what that gossip created. An $80,000 IRS audit doesn't just affect someone's bank account. It affects their sleep, their relationships, their mental health, their reputation, and their future opportunities. It mirrors the full spectrum of damage they inflicted through their words. The multiplication effect also appears in how the consequences manifest. It's rarely just one financial problem, it's a cascade. The audit happens and suddenly their credit card interest rates spike. Their insurance premiums increase. Their car needs expensive repairs they can't afford. Their housing costs go up unexpectedly. Their job becomes unstable. It's as if once the door to financial chaos opens, multiple problems rush through simultaneously. This reflects the ripple effect their gossip created. When they talked about your financial struggles, they didn't just affect you, they affected how others saw you, how opportunities flowed to you, and how support showed up or didn't in your life. So when consequences come for them, they experience that same multi-layered disruption. What really amplifies this effect is repetition. The person who gossips about your finances once might face a proportional response, but the person who makes it a habit, who brings up your struggles repeatedly, who continues discussing your situation long after it should have been forgotten, they're compounding their karmic debt with every conversation. Each gossip session is another charge on the cosmic credit card. And when the statement finally arrives, the balance owed reflects every single transaction. This is why some people face financial devastation that seems completely disproportionate to their external circumstances. They're not just dealing with one consequence, they're dealing with the accumulated energetic debt from dozens or hundreds of moments when they chose to speak about someone else's struggles instead of holding compassionate silence. Financial gossip always contains an element of exposure, taking someone's private struggle and making it public knowledge. The universe has a very specific response to exposure that's done with malicious or careless intent. It exposes the exposer. But it doesn't just expose their finances, it exposes everything they've been hiding, especially the contradictions between their public image and their private reality. The person who gossiped about your financial struggles while projecting an image of success suddenly has their own financial instability revealed to everyone, and it's often revealed in more humiliating ways than what you experienced, because the universe accounts for the hypocrisy factor. I've seen people who talked about others' money problems while driving leased luxury cars they couldn't afford suddenly face repossession in very public settings. I've watched individuals who mocked someone's bankruptcy while maintaining an image of wealth have their own foreclosure notices posted on their front door for the whole neighborhood to see. The exposure always seems to happen in the most visible way possible. At work, in their community, on social media, anywhere their reputation was built. This isn't cruelty, it's symmetry. They made someone else's private struggle public, so their own private struggles become public. The method matches the offense. What's particularly fascinating is how this exposure often reveals long-standing deception. The gossiper wasn't just in the same financial situation as the person they mocked. They were often in worse shape and hiding it. The judgment they projected onto others was actually self-judgment they couldn't face. So when exposure comes, it doesn't just reveal current problems, it reveals the whole house of cards they've been maintaining for years. The loans they hid from their spouse, the second mortgage nobody knew about, the maxed out credit cards kept secret, the gambling debt or shopping addiction they've been concealing, the business that's been failing for months while they maintained appearances. All of it comes tumbling out at once. This principle explains why financial gossipers often face consequences that feel socially devastating, not just financially challenging. The IRS audit that leads to their employer finding out about their tax problems. The garnished wages that their co-workers notice. The foreclosure that happens in their upscale neighborhood where they've built their entire identity. The bankruptcy filing that becomes public record just as they were being considered for a promotion. The universe doesn't just correct the financial imbalance, it corrects the social imbalance created by their gossip. They use social channels to damage someone else, so social channels are used to reveal their truth. It's a complete circle, mathematically precise in its justice. Every financial struggle is a test, but not just for the person experiencing it. It's also a test for everyone around them. How do you respond when someone you know faces financial hardship? Do you offer help? Maintain compassionate silence? Or do you turn their pain into entertainment? The people who choose gossip are failing a fundamental test of character. And that failure has consequences that extend far beyond just karmic payback. They're demonstrating to the universe exactly how they should be treated when their own struggles arrive. And the universe is an excellent student. It takes notes. When someone gossips about your financial struggles, they're essentially saying, this is how financial hardship should be treated, with judgment, exposure, and mockery. The universe responds, understood. That's exactly how we'll treat you when you face similar circumstances. This is why financial gossipers rarely receive the grace, help, or privacy they need when their own crises hit. The compassion they failed to extend becomes the compassion they failed to receive. Their own family members discuss their problems openly. Their own friends share their struggles as cautionary tales or entertainment. The privacy and dignity they denied you gets denied to them in measure multiplied. They taught the universe how they want financial struggle to be handled, and the universe is simply honoring their lesson plan. This principle reveals something profound about how energetic consequences work. They're not arbitrary punishments handed down by a vengeful force. They're natural results of the energetic patterns we establish through our choices. When you respond to someone's hardship with gossip, you're literally programming the universe's response to your future hardship. You're establishing the protocol, setting the precedent, creating the template, and the universe has perfect memory and perfect consistency. It will apply that exact template back to you, not out of revenge, but out of absolute fairness. You demonstrated the standard, you receive that standard, you set the bar. What makes this particularly painful for financial gossipers is that they usually had the opportunity to act differently. The moment they heard about someone's financial struggle was a moment of choice. They could have offered help, stayed silent, or offered private encouragement. Instead, they chose gossip, and in that choice, they forfeited the right to a different treatment when their turn came. This isn't divine punishment. It's natural law. Energy mirrors energy. Response mirrors response. The compassion you give creates the compassion available to you. The judgment you spread creates the judgment that greets you. It's not complicated, and it's not negotiable. It simply is. One of the most striking patterns is when these financial consequences strike gossipers. It's rarely immediate, which leads some people to believe they've escaped consequences entirely, but the universe isn't interested in immediate gratification. It's interested in maximum impact and perfect teaching moments. The consequences typically arrive at the moment when they'll be most keenly felt and most clearly understood, as connected to the original gossip. This timing isn't coincidental, it's intentional, orchestrated by the same intelligence that governs all cause and effect in this reality. Often, the financial reckoning comes right when the gossiper has reached a point of feeling secure, even superior. They've moved past whatever insecurities drove their gossip. They've achieved some level of success or stability. Their life looks good on paper. They've almost forgotten about you and your struggles entirely. That's precisely when the IRS letter arrives, when the lawsuit gets filed, when the audit begins. The timing serves a specific purpose. It ensures they cannot attribute their situation to bad luck or poor circumstances. Their life was going well. There was no obvious reason for financial chaos to strike. But strike it does, and the contrast between their previous stability and sudden crisis makes the lesson impossible to ignore. The timing also often coincides with milestones or moments when they're publicly celebrating their success. The audit notice arrives right before a major purchase or vacation they've been bragging about. The tax bill lands just as they've been posting about their financial wins on social media. The financial collapse happens right when they're advising others about money or positioning themselves as financially savvy. The universe has an impeccable sense of irony, and these timings are designed to create cognitive dissonance that forces self-reflection. How did this happen? Why now? What did I do to attract this? Those questions, if honestly pursued, lead directly back to the gossip they thought was harmless and forgotten. Sometimes the timing is even more specific. The consequences arrive on an anniversary of when they gossiped about you, or during the same season, or when you yourself are finally experiencing recovery or success. This creates a reversal that's almost poetic. As you rise, they fall. As your finances stabilize, theirs collapse. As you finally experience relief, they enter the struggle they once mocked you for enduring. This isn't the universe being petty, it's the universe being educational. The timing ensures that everyone involved can see the pattern, understand the connection, and learn the lesson. It's consciousness, evolution through consequence, timed for maximum clarity and minimum deniability. Financial gossip doesn't just affect the gossiper, it affects everyone in their circle. When someone spreads stories about your financial struggles, they're essentially teaching their friends, family, and colleagues that this behavior is acceptable. They're normalizing the violation of someone's privacy during their most vulnerable moments. And the universe responds by creating situations where their entire social circle gets to experience the consequences of that normalized behavior. The friends who listened to the gossip and didn't speak up suddenly face their own financial scrutiny. The family members who joined in the judgment encounter their own money problems. The entire network experiences a wave of financial challenges that feel inexplicable and coincidental, but are actually energetically linked. This ripple effect serves an important function. It breaks down the social acceptance of financial gossip within that community. When enough people in a friend group or family system experience painful consequences after participating in or tolerating financial gossip, the culture shifts. People become more cautious, more compassionate, more aware that words have power and consequences. The universe doesn't just correct individual behavior, it corrects collective behavior. It transforms entire social ecosystems by ensuring that toxic patterns become too costly to maintain. The group that once bonded over discussing your financial struggles now bonds over dealing with their own simultaneous financial crises, and in that shared struggle they often finally develop the empathy they lacked before. I've witnessed entire office environments shift after one person who gossiped about a colleague's money problems faced a devastating audit. Suddenly, conversations about finances became off-limits. People who previously participated in financial gossip became protective of others' privacy. The culture changed because the cost of the old culture became visible and undeniable. This is how consciousness evolves, not through preaching or rules, but through consequences that are so clear they create immediate and lasting behavioral change. The person who gossiped becomes an unintentional teacher, and their suffering becomes a lesson that protects others from making the same mistake. The ripple effect also means that the gossiper's financial consequences often continue longer and go deeper than expected because they're not just balancing their own karmic debt, they're balancing the collective debt created by everyone they influenced. Every person they told, every mind they poisoned with judgment about your situation, every instance where they normalized the violation of financial privacy, all of it adds weight to their karmic load. This is why some people face financial challenges that seem to persist despite their best efforts to resolve them. They're not just dealing with one consequence, they're dealing with a web of energetic debts that extends throughout their social network. Only when they truly understand what they did, make genuine amends, and actively work to reverse the culture they created, can they finally begin to experience relief. Eventually, every person who gossips about someone's financial struggles faces a moment of unavoidable recognition. A moment when they finally understand, viscerally, not just intellectually, what they did and why. What's happening to them is connected. This moment often comes when they're in the depths of their own financial crisis, feeling the shame, fear, and vulnerability they once mocked in you. In that moment, if they're honest with themselves, they remember. They remember the jokes they made, the stories they told, the judgment they spread, and they realize with devastating clarity that they invited this experience through their own words and energy. This recognition is often the most painful part of the consequence, because it strips away all ability to play the victim. They can't blame the economy, their employer, the IRS, or bad luck. They have to face the fact that they created this through their own choices. That weight. The weight of knowing you manifested your own suffering by violating someone else during their suffering is heavier than any financial debt. It's a spiritual reckoning that forces transformation, whether they're ready for it or not. Some people embrace this lesson, apologize, even if only privately or to the universe, and genuinely change their behavior. Others resist, continuing to play victim and refusing to connect their current struggles to their past actions. But even resistance is a choice that brings consequences, extending their struggle until the lesson finally penetrates their consciousness. The lesson is always the same at its core. Financial struggle is not entertainment, not weakness, and not evidence of moral failure. It's a human experience that deserves compassion, privacy, and respect. Until the gossiper learns this lesson, truly embodies it in their thoughts, words, and actions, their financial challenges will persist in various forms. The universe is patient and consistent. It will keep presenting the lesson in different packages until it's finally learned. The audit might be resolved, but then another financial crisis appears. That one might be handled, but then another emerges. The pattern continues until the fundamental transformation occurs, until they become the kind of person who would never dream of gossiping about someone else's financial struggles, because they understand, finally, the sacred vulnerability of that experience. What's profound about this lesson is that it often transforms gossipers into some of the most compassionate people regarding financial struggles. Once they've walked through the fire they once mocked others for enduring, once they've felt the shame of exposure and the weight of judgment, once they've experienced the isolation that comes when people talk about your money problems, they emerge different. If they truly learn the lesson, they become fierce protectors of others' financial privacy. They speak up when they hear financial gossip. They offer help quietly to those struggling. They understand that financial hardship can happen to anyone, and says nothing definitive about someone's character, worth, or intelligence. In this way, the consequence becomes a catalyst for consciousness evolution, turning someone who added suffering to the world into someone who reduces it. While gossipers face their reckonings, something beautiful often happens to the person who was gossiped about. Your financial situation begins to shift, not despite the gossip, but almost because of it. When you maintain dignity and integrity through financial struggle, when you refuse to retaliate or gossip about your gossipers, when you keep working quietly toward your recovery without making it a public performance, you're accumulating energetic currency that the universe absolutely rewards. The same energy that created consequences for them creates restoration for you. It's not a coincidence that many people who were once gossiped about for their financial struggles end up experiencing dramatic financial turnarounds that seem to come from nowhere. This restoration often arrives in unexpected ways. The job opportunity that seemed impossible suddenly appears. The debt that felt insurmountable suddenly becomes manageable through circumstances you didn't orchestrate. The financial breakthrough you needed arrives through channels you never anticipated. The universe has a way of rewarding quiet perseverance and dignified struggle, especially when that struggle was made more difficult by others' thoughtless words. While your gossipers are facing audits and financial chaos, you're experiencing doors opening, resources appearing, and momentum building. The contrast is rarely subtle. It's as if the energy they lost through their judgment is redirected toward you as unexpected blessing. What makes this restoration particularly powerful is that it's often completely disconnected from your own efforts, though your efforts matter. You're working hard, doing everything right, but the scale of the shift doesn't match the input. It exceeds it. This is the universe correcting imbalances, ensuring that those who maintained integrity during hardship eventually experience abundance that reflects their character, not just their circumstances. The person who was once gossiped about for driving an old car suddenly receives an unexpected inheritance or bonus that allows them to purchase a reliable vehicle. The individual whose credit card debt became office gossip suddenly has their debt forgiven through a program they didn't even know existed. The one whose housing struggles were family dinner conversation suddenly finds themselves in stable, comfortable housing through a series of fortuitous events. This restoration isn't just financial, it's reputational and social. The same people who gossiped about your struggles or silently listened often witness your recovery. They see you rise, they watch you stabilize, they observe you thriving, and in that observation, the narrative they created about you, that you were irresponsible, incapable, or somehow deserving of hardship, crumbles completely. Your success becomes its own defense, requiring no words from you. Meanwhile, their own struggles become visible, and the judgments they once projected onto you now reflect back onto them in the eyes of others. It's a complete reversal that happens naturally without you needing to orchestrate or even speak about it. Your life becomes the evidence, and evidence is far more powerful than argument. If someone gossiped about your financial struggles, remember this: their words revealed their character, not yours. Financial hardship is temporary, but integrity is permanent. The universe saw everything they said and did, and the universe is responding with mathematical precision. You don't need to defend yourself, explain yourself, or prove anything to anyone. Just keep moving forward with dignity, work toward your goals with quiet determination, and trust that the same cosmic intelligence that governs the stars is also governing the balancing of accounts in your life. The $80,000 audit they're facing isn't your concern. It's the universe doing what it does best, teaching through consequence. Every financial struggle is a chapter, not the whole story. And for those who maintained compassion, integrity, and silence during that chapter, the next chapters are often remarkable. While your gossipers are explaining to the IRS why their returns don't add up, you're building something solid and lasting. While they're losing sleep over audits and debts, you're experiencing the peace that comes from knowing you walked through hardship with your character intact. The universe rewards that. Not immediately, not always obviously, but always eventually. And when your restoration comes, it won't be because you fought back or sought revenge. It will be because you stayed aligned with something higher than the pettiness that tried to drag you down. If this message resonated deeply, if you've been the subject of financial gossip and you're watching things shift in your favor while your gossipers face struggles they can't explain, type 888 in the comments. The number of financial abundance and cosmic balance. Your story isn't over. In fact, the best chapters are just beginning. Subscribe to this channel if you want more content that reveals how energy, consequences, and universal law operate in real life. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been talked about during their financial struggles and needs to know that the universe hasn't forgotten them. Thank you for being here. Your resilience is noticed, your integrity is valued, and your restoration is already in motion.